do you know that approximately 5 to 10% of US women of childbearing age have PCOS? That's like 5 million women out there, right? 5 million US women in America who have PCOS of childbearing age. I mean, that's like an alarming number, right? So we are talking about PCOS. We're talking with Laurence Annez. So hang on for 1 second while I get her in. So Laurence is a PCOS coach, and herself struggled with PCOS. So she herself had all kind of issues like anxiety, depression, and you see her right now. Hi, hello there. Hi, Laurence. How are
Hello.
you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. I was just telling our viewers that almost like 5 million women in America have PCOS, and then how you also had PCOS and you struggled with all kind of anxiety and all the symptoms that are associated with PCOS, and then how you became a holistic coach after that, right? So tell us a little bit about yourself, your personal journey, and of course your professional journey here.
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you for having me. And yes, PCOS is so common. It's said to be found in about 1 in 10 women, about 10% of the population. So it is very common, most common cause of infertility in women of reproductive age. And for me, journey started around 21, where all of my symptoms just blew up in my face. And my journey really brought me to a nutrition book, which kind of opened my eyes to this whole different way of living. I thought I was healthy, but when I really looked at it, I wasn't. And I started to really experiment with nutrition. It led me to nutrition school, started to really dive into like how to use food as more of a medicine approach. And I started to see some results. And I also started to reach a plateau where I wasn't really getting any better than where I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where I started to actually fuse all of the holistic approach with, the emotional health, the mental health, the physical health, the spiritual health, all of these things coming together with your lifestyle, with your mindset. And so now I'm just so passionate about sharing that, because from my journey, it was a long struggle, and I really hope that I can shorten that struggle for as many women as possible, because education is really important with this, because I find that in the conventional model, there's really not that many solutions, whereas there are so many options. There are so many options that can help you, and it's really just about, just experimenting and really understanding how your body works.
No, I think that's great, and let's just talk about so what kind of nutrition and what kind of changes. I think you are the best example. I'm taking your case study or a story because it's a success story, and that's what you're using to help other women out there. So what are the framework or the pillars, right? That women should start. Well, what diet, we talked about that, or let's just talk about diet.
Yeah. So with diet, I'm not really somebody who just has like a copy paste formula, because I'm really big on the bio individuality. That being said, when I do coach women and I do have a course, I really go through certain foundations. For instance, they kind of go with the PCOS types. So for instance, the stress type, the inflammatory type, the insulin resistant type. And I think that all of these need to be addressed, whether you are more of one type or the other, and whether your blood tests show one specific marker is elevated. Because these are going to be really important, because they all fuse together, right? They all affect one another. And so that's why I'm always looking at an anti-inflammatory diet, whether that's more of a Mediterranean approach, you're adding more, plant proteins in your diet, healthy fats, all of that kind of thing, to really make sure that the inflammation goes down, because we know that PCOS is a state of chronic inflammation going on. So that's really important. So an anti-inflammatory diet, looking at balancing your blood sugar. So this is obviously going to be important to look at what types of foods you're including, but also it's about how you're eating and when you're eating, because that's also going to affect your blood sugar. So for me, it's really about complex carbohydrates. I'm not at all into the low carb, like anti-carb movement. We really need them, especially to feed our gut microbiome, which we know is lacking in diversity in PCOS women. So we really need to make sure that we're getting those prebiotics into our gut. So complex carbohydrates are really great. We want to be able to balance our meals with each macronutrient. That means protein, fat, and carbs. So really making sure that our meals are blood sugar balancing so that we're not, constantly on this roller coaster ride, and we know how terrible that feels. So really, really important to look at that. And then for me, honestly, when I do work with women, it's about making it enjoyable as well. And so that's why I love to find like healthy alternatives. So for instance, if somebody loves pasta or they love, different meals that they think they can't have, let's look at how we can find an alternative ingredient that still allows you to have that meal, if that makes sense.
Sure, sure. And so you also talked about other spiritual and other things, right, that go with the PCOS and exercise. So what are some of the things, the other things beyond diet that women should follow?
Yeah, so when it comes to stress is a big piece, and that's going to really look at your lifestyle and how you're showing up, if you're actually respecting your needs, you're listening to yourself, you're honoring your desires, your voice, because I find that a lot of the time we're just suppressing what we want, what we desire, what we think we can have. And we're also shooting on ourselves all the time, especially PCOS women. I find this trend of just putting all of this pressure on ourselves and just not actually respecting our own voice. So really important to really get in tune with ourselves. So that's even understanding, well, what are my needs? Am I actually giving myself what I need? Whether it's, having a regular stress management practice. So for me, that looks like regular meditation, regular breath work. That also means adding fun and play into your day, because I think that as we grow up, we just have this society kind of puts into our head that we need to be responsible and we need to be serious. But there is a little child in us that really just wants to still have fun. And when we suppress that, then we can see things like self-sabotage coming up and even like mood imbalances, low energy. So really important that I find that it's really important to look at, what brings you joy and what brings you love and those kinds of things, and really implementing them into your day, because they are just as much a priority as your job, as your kids, as all of those things, right? So, because I think we really just look at the diet part, like what am I eating? But then we don't look at, well, how am I feeling? How am I showing up? How am I moving my body? Is it in ways that are actually energizing me, or is it draining me? So that's a big part. And one of the big things that I work on as a milestone with my clients is, what is the internal dialogue going on? Because I know we all have that inner mean girl, so she's never fully going to go away, but it's really understanding the majority of the time, what is the dialogue going on? Is it like life is unfair? I look terrible. I suck, whatever it is, all of these defeating words. And it's really important to first have that awareness, because a lot of the time we don't even think about that voice. We're just in it, right?
Yeah.
And so this is where I really start to look at, okay, let's first become aware of what the majority of your thoughts are looking like. And then we can start to actually shift them into more empowering words, so that you're actually working on the same team instead of just working against yourself, if that makes sense.
Sure. So you're talking about not only diet. Most of us are obviously obsessed with diet, what to eat and look great and all that kind of stuff, right? And then the second part is the mind, right? How you're feeling, the mental part. That's very important, and that's what you're emphasizing. So that makes complete sense. And how do you mentally feel? Whether you do yoga, meditation, it's very important for you to feel from a mental point of view. So let's just focus a little bit on the diet part. Is there a certain type of a group of foods that the women should focus on PCOS?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, it's really focusing, every meal should have the protein, fat, and carbohydrates, right? But then again, it's really about what type, because quality also matters. It's not just about quantity. I think we put a lot of focus on macro counting or calorie counting, but we need to remember that food is also going to be different. Like 100 calories of Oreos is not going to be the same as 100 calories of an apple. It's different information going into our cells, right? So for me, it's really about, how are we nourishing ourselves? Is this something that's going to give us more energy, more life, or is this something that's going to be depleting our energy? And so for me, it's really about looking at whole foods. If there's any label that I really only ever adopt, it's whole foods, and the rest is really going to be individual to you. Also looking at plenty of plant-based proteins, as I mentioned before, because I know there's a lot of carb fear out there, but this is really, I find that it's really something that's hindering women's ability to, you know, grow and heal, because carbohydrates are so essential. We know this, for our gut microbiome, for our ability to make thyroid hormones, for our ability to nourish our nervous system, for our liver health, our blood sugar. All of these things actually need enough carbohydrates and the right types. So it's really going away from, you know, the refined carbohydrates, the excess sugars, the processed foods, into more of, well, it's an apple, it's a potato, it's, you know, like a whole food form. Yeah. So really focusing on plenty of those brightly colored fruits and vegetables, because then we're getting lots of the antioxidants. And we know that there is this oxidative stress and a lot more inflammation going on in the PCOS pathogenesis. So really focusing on foods that can combat that free radical damage is going to be really important. And we know those are found in the brightly colored fruits and vegetables. So some of my favorite foods are the berries, the apples, leafy greens, all of those vibrant foods that are going to be really fresh and like lots of nutrients in them. And then when it comes to fats, we also can tend to overlook this and just look at, well, it's a fat. And we don't really look at like what type of fat it is. So really going away from too much of the omega-6, like the canola oil, the peanut oil, the safflower oil, a lot of the fried foods, and focusing more on the avocado, the olives, the coconut. I always recommend having like the whole food form as much as possible. Wild fatty fish are also great, because then you're getting those omega-3 fats, and we know that those are anti-inflammatory, and we need to get them from our diet because we can't make them in our bodies. So those a little bit of spiel on the fats. And then in terms of protein, I mean, for me also it's about quality. I know that it can be a little bit expensive if we're going organic, but for me, what I do is I focus on mostly plant-based proteins for a variety of reasons, for health in general, but also if you're on a budget, this can help you reduce your cost. And then focus on the quality animal products, whether that's, you know, the wild fish, the chicken, the beef, whatever it is, but focusing on pasture raised, organic, grass-fed, because that does make a big difference. As we know, it will make a difference in terms of inflammatory chemicals that can be in there, compounds, as well as the antibiotics, hormones. So it's really important that we also pay attention to how was our food raised, how was it grown, and all of that. I hope that answers a little bit.
Yeah, that's a lot of information out there. And then any particular, like on cruciferous vegetables, you know, because cruciferous vegetables also has a lot of research, like the broccolis and the cabbage and the cauliflowers, right? Those are also pretty good, correct?
Yeah, I love those. I love recommending them. Just, you know, cooking them well. I don't recommend having them raw. But other than that, they are great foods. They can help, you know, with the liver detoxifying toxins, our excess estrogen, so helping with like any PMS symptoms that are coming up. So yeah, those are great as well. Love those.
So when you had PCOS, how much time did it take you to get to normal? I should say that.
Oh, wow. That's a good question. It definitely took a number of years, as I said.
Number of years.
Yeah,
wow.
I think my journey was much slower because at the beginning, I started to do nutrition. So I definitely had symptoms that improved quickly. So it could have even taken like a few months. But there was a lot of like downfalls. And I think this was also because I fell into the trap of orthorexia, disordered eating, because I was looking at everything I couldn't have, all of the rules, all the restrictions. So then I really fell into a dark place around there. And that's where I started to address the mindset, the emotional health. So for me, I think that I just had a lot of lessons I had to learn. And so that's why it took a lot more time. But in general, it's definitely, you can see a shift within a few weeks, a few months, but it also depends how long have you been living the way you've been living and all of those types of things, right? So it really depends on the person. For me, it was definitely a longer journey, and which is why I'm so passionate about helping people like skip that, and so that they can see results a lot more quicker.
Sure. Okay, so to summarize, I think, you know, how would you summarize someone who has PCOS? What should they start with? Like, obviously, we talked about the diet part, and we went into details about the diet, you know, plant-based proteins, plant-based diet as much as possible, complex carbohydrates, healthy fats. These are very important. Then the main thing you talked about is the emotional part of it, which a lot of us ignore, quite honestly, right? And so that is very, very important to make sure that your mental health is or stable or balanced. I should say that, to make sure your hormones are balanced, right? Anything
Mhm.
else you'd like to add for women out there who have PCOS?
Yeah, I think it's really about, don't overwhelm yourself. There's so much out there. This is the number one complaint I hear. It's about there's so much information. Like, we don't have a lack of information. So it's really just taking like one piece. If you could take one piece of advice from this live today, just take that, implement it, and then go to the next one. Because when we just overwhelm ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
then we just lead to self-sabotage and overwhelm, and then we just don't even do anything, right? So
Yeah.
that would be number one thing. Try to keep things simple, because I think we overcomplicate it so much. And like, what is the superfood I need? And what is this?
Yeah.
Let's just focus on whole foods first. If you want to start there, that's a great start.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, I think, would be stress management. So having anything that you can implement during your day that gets you present, that makes you have fun, whatever it is. And yeah, I think it's really important to really implement the lifestyle alongside the diet. So for instance, with movement, I see a lot of women like questioning, how should they move? What's the best workout? Anything you enjoy that gets you moving, start there. And I think it's also important to remember that as females, we are not going to be operating the same way every single day, because we operate from a cyclical nature. So focusing in on how are you feeling, and incorporating all types of movement, whether it's like slower movement like yoga, biking, cardio, lifting a few weights, so that you're incorporating a little bit of everything and you're not constantly like pushing yourself and burning out. So those are kind of like movement, stress management, and diet, some good places to start and some things to think about.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I think this is very useful to all the young women or the women who are going through PCOS. You want to catch this video later. I see people joining right now. We are ready to wrap up right now. And any comments anyone has, any feedback, you're welcome to give it to us. Thank you so much, Laurence, for being with us. And appreciate your advice to all the women out there with PCOS. To all the women out there, there is hope. You can get on the right foot, right? Listen to Laurence. She's been able to reverse her PCOS and she's living a healthy life. So can you. So don't, right? Don't get disheartened. Be positive psychology. That's what you should be thinking about. With that,
Yes,
I'd like to
so
wrap up
many
this
other
session.
women
Thank
as
you so
well.
much. And yes, thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you.